Good morning and happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to another edition of What's Next with MBRT. I am your lovely host today, Annalisa Sawyer, State Program Manager, and I am so pleased to have with me today one of my newest best friends, volunteers from Northrop Grumman and fellow Boricua, Mr. Carlos Charlie Flores. Thank you so much for joining us today, dear. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am well. Thank you so much for asking. And thank you again for taking time out of your busy day to, sit with us and have this chat about something that I know we probably hear a lot about, but maybe some people don't know exactly what it is. And that's cybersecurity. So I'm going to not delay so that we don't, take up too much of your time. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So can you start off by telling us exactly what your title is and what you do at Northrop Grumman?
Sure. So by title, I'm a cybersecurity architect. So what that means is that we take into consideration requirements from a customer. We look at what their needs are, and we try to build a system or a solution in terms of what they need and to meet the government standards and the government regulations. So that's what a cyber architect does. Um, we look at information, analyze information, put together a plan, deliver it to the customer, and work with them to deliver a product at the end of the day.
Oh, I mean, it sounds intricate, but it sounds simple at the same time. So when you say customers, is this specifically government customers, or is it just the general public, or individual businesses?
Right, it could be all because Northrop goes beyond just the federal government. So we could be working with private industry, but
Mhm.
primarily our primary customer is the DoD, the Department of Defense. So we do those customizations for anything from what goes into building a jet, what goes into building a ship, what goes into building a satellite, and look at the design in terms of cyber components, supply chain. That's part of what we do.
That sounds like so far above my pay grade, but it sounds like it's really, really deep. So so when a customer comes to you and they give you what it is that they're looking for, and they say, okay, this is what I need, and I need it by X, Y, and Z date, what I guess is the outcome for, I guess, the general public? Is it something that, because when I hear security, I think of things that go to keep us safe. So when a customer comes to you, is that their overall goal, is to have something that evidently, or eventually keeps us safe?
So several aspects of that is yes, because for example, let's take a look at building an aircraft.
Okay.
So the cyber piece of the aircraft. Today, aircrafts are system of systems. So they have navigation, they have landing systems, they have the engines, obviously, they have the surface components. So all of those components make a system, but all of those systems are dependent on software, hardware enabled by software. So when the pilot or the crew in the front is going to land, they want to have a signal in the front that the landing gear is down. Well, how do they know that if they can't actually see the landing gear? So they have to have instruments that tell them the landing gear is actually down. So the cyber component to that is the signal comes from the system that's going to deploy the landing gear. That's software motivated.
Right.
There's a button you push in the front, and software says, "Hey, open the bays, drop the landing gear, and get ready for landing." So at the same time, there's surface components, the ailerons, the wings, the empennage, all of that is working together to land that aircraft. Those are signals that go across the aircraft with decisions to deploy the landing gear, to um, increase the crease speed. All those indications are forms of components in terms of decisions that the system is doing. So no different than when we drive. If we're going to make a left turn, we put our left turn signal. The brain is doing that. In the aircraft, the brain is the software and the computers that drive the software. The cyber component to that is I'm building software. The cybersecurity component to that is I'm building the software that deploys the landing gear, and it's not the software that engages the engines to go faster.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So when that's discrepancies in terms of how the system will work, it has to work all in unison to do a particular mission, a particular task, and the cybersecurity piece is to ensure that is being done correctly. So what we do is we test all of that. We have software testers, we have hardware testers. We'll
Wow.
plug stuff into what we call an Ironbird, which essentially is the aircraft skeleton, if you will,
Okay.
with all the components that actually move, but you're doing it in a lab.
Wow.
So it's a big, big compound because the aircraft may be relatively small if you're thinking about a fighter aircraft,
Mhm.
but the building that houses all the components, that could be huge. So we're looking in that environment to make sure that the signals are correct, that the information is correct, and we document, and then that becomes documentation for safety,
Mhm.
what we call DO 178 and DO 250. Those are regulations by the Department of Defense and Federal Aviation Agency. And then there's DOD 8500, what we call the Information Assurance or now Cybersecurity. So there's two components, two strengths to how we do cybersecurity in our environment. So that essentially is how we work.
And I was, as I was listening to you, it seems like there's a bunch of different little components that all have to work together in order for the larger scheme of things to be able to function properly. Because if there's one misstep somewhere or one thing that doesn't connect or send the right signal, it doesn't allow whatever it is to function properly. Would that be a fair assessment of things?
Yes. That's why
That
for us, some of those skills are not just I know I like mathematics and I
right.
do computer science. It's more than that. You have to be a broad thinker. You have to
Mhm.
be an analytical thinker. You have to be a trouble solver. So when you're doing these type of things, think, and this is what I tell students: think what you do on a daily basis to take several actions. You just don't walk out the door. You actually start by brushing your teeth, getting
Right.
together your uniform, or put on all your clothes to walk out the door. All that is something that the brain does. And in cybersecurity, we evaluate how computer systems do the same process, and we make sure and document that the process is being done correctly, that all these systems work together to become a system of systems.
I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head with where I was going to go next, because it sounds like it's very, very deeply rooted in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. But as you said, it kind of goes beyond that because there's the analytical component of it, where, as some people would say, the common sense portion of it, where you have to use those everyday tasks, if you will, that we do. So that kind of leads to my next question. What type of educational background or training would one need to have to go into a position such as yours, or even in the industry such as yours?
Right. So I started, my bachelor's is in mathematics and my master's is in engineering. But in my background, I've worked with people that were not college educated,
No.
but they were awesome musicians because it takes creativity to be able to do computer programming.
Gotcha.
Now, the beauty of computer programming is that you start to understand how mathematics works because you have to build instructions to how the system is going to do whatever it's going to do. So you have to have that broader way of thinking to be able to do that development and be able to use those computer programs to do the job you want it to do. But you have to have an analytical mind. That's where the science comes into play.
Gotcha.
Being able to solve mathematical problems. And I'm not talking calculus, because like I used to tell my professors and later I told students, if I have to solve an integral in order to do XYZ in the aircraft, we have problems. We have to have a computer that does that for me.
Great.
Otherwise, oh yeah, I can get lost with my pencils and pen and paper on trying to resolve an integral to do whatever it is supposed to do. So no, you have to have systems that do that for you, but you have to have the understanding, the analytical understanding on how that works, because that's how you troubleshoot.
That makes sense. When I was in the classroom myself and I taught math, I would tell students knowing the process of how to do something is only one portion of it. If you don't know when to apply the appropriate process, it really doesn't matter that you know the process. So that makes sense.
So that's really important, because sometimes in the classroom, I got lucky in a sense that when you did any particular problem solving, the steps were evaluated. And
Right.
sometimes they gave you points for following the steps, but they would take points away if you didn't get to the right answer, but at least you follow the steps.
Right.
So it's critical that you get into the mindset of understanding the steps, following the steps, because that is how you troubleshoot when at the end your results are not what you expected. So now you got to go back to your process to see what did I miss in the steps that didn't allow me to arrive to the conclusion that I was expecting.
And that, again, that's that analytical component, being able to decipher and kind of go back and find the error in your process. So that's great. So in terms of, I guess, kids that are maybe in high school, or even if there's some kids that are in high school and have started taking some college courses, what types of courses might be necessary for a position such as yours? I would definitely think some math and science courses, but are there anything else, or what specifically types of math and science courses would be good?
Yeah, so I took some class. Being a math major, we went into deep end. I
Right.
mean,
Sure.
abstract algebra, things that really, really are tough.
Right.
Calculus is going to be necessary. Physics may be necessary. Chemistry is not so much, but there's mathematics in chemistry.
Right.
Biology, not so much, but there's analysis in biology. But your main courses in mathematics, trigonometry, algebra, those basic classes, you need to have a solid foundation. Like one of my professors in physics used to say, you're not going to fail the physics class, but I bet you will fail the math class.
Wow.
Because he said, I'm here to teach you physics. You will learn physics, but if you don't have a mathematical background, you're not going to pass the class. And we will get into strange looks and hand gestures, trying to figure out if the force was going down or the force was going up. And the sun ray came in through this prism, and this is one mass, and it went out the other way. I'll never forget doing one of my tests. He walks by my test, he looks at it and just laughs and walks away. And I'm like, oh boy, here.
Oh, what? Right.
So I did. I went all over again and did something totally different than I started, and I ended up getting 100 out of the test.
Wow. Wow. Kudos to you. Yeah, I tell, kids myself, and, again, when I was in the classroom, it's that foundation. And like you said, your professor told you if you didn't have a firm foundation in math, that the physics part was not going to be an easy walk. You can't kind of overstep that foundational component, because again, it's those little things that tie everything together. So that makes logical sense. The one thing that I did not hear you mention, that I'm sure a lot of people think are necessary components because they hear the word cyber and they automatically think technology. I didn't hear you mention any type of computer courses. Are those types of courses necessary in your position?
So yes and no. So
Okay.
what you're going to do, you have to be a computer science major because you have to do the programming.
Right.
But if you're doing things like what I do today, which is mostly work in the development side, trying to work with the customer to lay out what is it that they have to do, we don't necessarily have to program, but we need to know about the computer programs.
Gotcha.
You know, back in my day, and we're talking a long time ago, it was Fortran, it was Basic, it was COBOL. Not anymore. We're
Right.
doing Java nowadays. We're doing a lot of operating systems, Linux. We do Ubuntu, and it's knowing all these systems, operating system, how they all work together. The Java that's behind the under the hood, like we say.
Right.
So there's computer languages that you will learn. But I'll tell you the same thing that I used to tell students in the past. What you're learning today in terms of computer language in college, by the time you walk out college, it's already obsolete.
Changed. Right.
So
Yep.
the basics that you're learning in terms of computer science is how do I program, following the steps that it. So when you look at a computer program and it looks pretty, you know, in geek mind, it
Right.
looks pretty because the steps are correct in a certain pattern. You
Okay.
look at it and it looks visibly right. It tells the evaluator, it tells the manager for that department, steps were followed. There's a discipline in what we're doing here, and it is easier to go find what happened when there's a problem, or it's easier to say how I can improve the program that I have. So what you really want to do is understand how to program,
Okay.
but most importantly, the discipline in the following the steps. In my background, in when I was flying with uh, one of the missions I had in Looking Glass. Looking Glass was a command and control nuclear aircraft. Basically, we were the guys flying in the sky in case of nuclear war, and things didn't happen right in the ground. We were the ones that were going to take over and continue the war. In Looking Glass, everything was step by step, and for us, it was do a step, eat a banana. So that whole concept that there's a discipline in doing things. You don't go to step 5 without going to steps 2, 3, and 4.
Right.
It doesn't matter how in your mind you can say I can go there. Yes, you can because you're an expert. But in doing that, in a critical environment where you have to make decisions, if you skip the step and you miss the point, now you got a problem.
Yeah, your problem. Yeah. That makes logical sense. So herein lies, I guess, the bigger thing. When someone comes into your industry and they're kind of starting at the ground level, what can they expect? And especially, I guess, on a day to day, I'm asking, and kind of extending on that. Now that we're kind of in this remote working environment, how has your job changed, if at all?
Yeah. So for folks coming in new to the environment, I personally try to teach them what is it that they have to do, because there's no real set plan on this is cyber. I tell people, you know, call it cyber, call it bananas, whatever you want to call it. The process is what you really want to focus on what is it that it means to do cyber work. And it used to be information assurance. It used to be information security. Well, somewhere there is a common denominator of information.
Right.
So you're looking at the data and you're trying to make sure that the data you're utilizing is accurate, that it has not been compromised, that it has not been changed in form. So what I mean is, if I have two computers talking to each other and I send a message to another to computer number 2, and my message was hello, how you're doing, you want to see hello, how you're doing on the other one.
Right.
You don't want to see that it didn't arrive, that the message never got there, even though there's a wire between the two. You want to see that the message said hello, how are you doing, as opposed to just HE, and the rest was lost.
Right.
And then you get into the other aspects of Well, is this computer supposed to be talking to me? So are we on the network that we share? Is it this system authorized to talk to me? And what do we put in the background to control? So we use routers, we use firewalls, we use encryption, we do all kinds of things. So the guy coming in out of high school, going into college, they're going to say, well, I'm going to go into cyber and I'm going to go learn cyber. You're going to learn computer science. You're going to learn mathematics. You're going to learn to interact with people. It's critically important for these engineers, future engineers, to not just be 100% geeks. You need to talk. You need to express yourself, both in writing and how you speak to others. So it's very critical that you know how to deliver an idea, deliver a solution, deliver a speech in
Right.
terms of what is it that you want to prove, and you have to be able to take your language classes. Um, I, being a math major, I did not like one bit. I had to read these books, and I had to Frankenstein, and I had to read all these other. But when I did it, I super enjoyed it. It increased my vocabulary.
Right.
It increased my ability to communicate. It makes me think outside of my box in terms of I'm talking now to a crowd that is stakeholders. And stakeholders are the people who are going to give you the money to say, yeah, follow up with that project. But
Right.
if you go speak geek to them and that's not what they understand, they'll look at you, think
And
that
cost.
theory, Sheldon talking to somebody. So it gets really ugly really quick.
Right. I totally get that. It's one of the things, it's the misconception that I think a lot of students have. If you're strong in math, that means that, you major in something that's math oriented and you don't have to worry about those other components like English. And that's so far fetched, because it's those soft skills, like you mentioned, being able to speak correctly, being able to write, being able to articulate yourself well verbally. Those things matter. And even in your position, like you said, to present an idea, those are things that are not math related, but they're necessary skills to have. How
Absolutely.
has your job changed with COVID-19, or has it at all?
So in my particular case, not much because I've been working remotely the whole.
Okay.
However, I have colleagues that have to be in a building because of what they do, and now the restrictions are how close you can be to people. So it's going to be a very interesting and challenging way forward because COVID is not going away. It
Unfortunately.
may stay here for the long term. So the big challenge for our young adults going into college, the big challenge is going to be you may not have to be inside a building anymore. You may not be going to that big engineering school over there. You're going to do this from home. So the big challenge is the discipline. One thing that I learned that was a real tough learning for me when I went to college, you go from an environment in high school, grade school of we just spent the summer, we just came back to school. Where did you spend the summer? How was it? Did you have fun? Oh no, not college. You,
Right.
you do your registration, and by day one, you're already 2 weeks behind.
Yeah.
Because one thing that you forgot to do was read the syllabus. And in the syllabus, the professor already told you by day one, you have to have 4 chapters
Right.
read of this. You have to have these homework assignments done. And guess what? The professor will tell you up front, I could care less that you did your homework. I'm not going to inspect it. I could care less that you read the book. I'm not going to inspect it. On the 19th, there's a test. You can be in the classroom from day one till the 19th. I could care less. But on that day, when you take the test, you're on my territory now.
You're right.
So if you did not study, you did not do your homework, you did not do the things to prepare you for that test, guarantee you, the professor is going to give you that test, and if you fail that test, it's on you.
It's on you. Yeah. That's so true. I couldn't have said it any better myself. So I really got just one last question for you because I don't want to hold you up any longer. This has been like so eye opening for me. It's so different from what I thought it was that you did. So somebody that may be interested in a career in cybersecurity, any tips? I mean, you've given us such great information as it is, but are there any other tips or suggestions that you could give to them, to the high school student or the recent graduate? What are some tips if they're interested in this industry?
Definitely. So, first, be patient and don't be discouraged too easy because this is not an easy profession. There's a lot of certifications that people have to take. Personally, I've never done them because I was working on weapon systems my whole career, and combat mission ready, that's my mantra. That's what we did. But there are certifications that at least show you have a basic knowledge. But then there's the challenge where some students may say, well, this guy graduated with honors. I don't have a chance. No. There's lots of opportunities. Sure, you may not have the best grades today. Sure, you may not have gotten accepted to the one school you thought you wanted to go to. The world is flat when it comes to cyber. I
Mm.
could go to the little school down in the middle of nowhere, and there's a computer science major over there, and I will learn from that guy, and I will learn from that school, and I will build my skills from that. And then I start working my way up through different jobs, and I finally get to where I want to go. Then there's the other side, what I did 30 years in the military. So even if you don't have the grades to get you into college, you do have at least the ability to take entry level tests to go into the military. The military will train you. The military will pay for you. And before you know it, the 2 years or 3 years that you signed up for are gone behind you, and you're at that point of deciding, well, what do I want to do? Well, since you got into the military, you got into a cyber career in the military, you have the backgrounds that everybody else is looking for, you're not going to be worried about a job.
Right.
Jobs will come to you. And then it's up to you to decide whether you want to continue in a technical background, actually working on computer systems, doing programming, working outside of that technical field to managerial fields, where you take teams of programmers and empower them to be better and empower them to deliver solutions. And there's just, all different directions of the highway. It's up to you which direction you want to go.
That is so good to hear because I'm sure throughout this entire conversation, there's been someone that's been watching that thought, oh, I'm not great in math. I'm not great, in this analytical component. I have no shot in doing this, even though I'm interested in it. And just knowing that there are alternative routes to end up in a career like this was great information for people that, feel like the traditional route may not be the way that they, want to go, but they're still interested in this career. So thank you for offering
What
that.
that college will do for you will humble you.
Oh, yeah.
We're
Oh,
a star in high school in terms of mathematics and everything. You walk into college and it's a whole different game.
well, different ball game. I couldn't have said it better myself. So, well, thank you so much for your information today. It has been definitely eye opening and definitely informative. Like I said, I've learned a lot because, again, what I thought cybersecurity was or what a cybersecurity architect was so differently removed from what you explained. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing, your insight and your knowledge with us and your experiences. They have been invaluable and we're so deeply honored to have had you with us today.
My pleasure. And I'm here whenever you need me to come back, or if your students have any questions that they want to forward to me, I'll be more than glad to take them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll make sure that we provide contact information for those that are interested in asking you some more questions. So thank you for that. So, all of my friends, that's our time for today. Thank you so much for tuning in with us. We hope you enjoyed this session of What's Next, talking about careers in cybersecurity. As always, we want to remind you to follow us on all of our social media platforms: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, of course. And if you have not already, shame on you. You should have downloaded our app by now, Way to Be, which is available in the Google Store as well as the Apple Store. So please make sure you take time to download that. So for MBRT and on behalf of Charlie and Northrop Grumman, thank you again for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next week on our next set of series. So take care. Have a great weekend, everyone. Stay safe. Follow social distancing. Wash your hands. Do all that good stuff to keep yourself protected. And we'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Power.